best in radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome in. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. It is October 27th, 2014. That is a Monday, and you know what that means. It's Manipulation Mondays with Andrew Hoffman. Andy.
And yes, it also means it's my 3-year anniversary today with Miles Franklin.
Wow. Hey, well, happy anniversary. And fortunately, I don't think you're going to run out of things to talk and write about anytime too soon, do you?
No, certainly not, as we have just 1 month left to the big Swiss gold referendum. And already I see the propaganda trying to fight it. You know, the initial polls have said that the yes votes are ahead, but the swarm of mainstream media articles trying to discredit it, in their fear. And of course, look, you have the Fed is meeting this week to supposedly end QE, and they know very well that the markets have to be in a certain space before they can even talk. And then there's going to be all kinds of manipulation in this last month as they desperately try to change the minds of the Switzerland about what they should do.
Yeah, well, elections, right?
And the elections on top of that. And again, we've talked about this. No one even knows who's running anymore because, we have one-party fascism, and no one could care less. There's not a single difference between the Democrats and Republicans. It's like, here we have a Senate race. It's Udall against Gardner. Udall's the Democrat incumbent. And, just one after the other saying, this guy's for abortion, this guy's against it, this guy's for gun control, this guy's against it, this guy supports Obama, this guy doesn't, blah, blah, blah. These are such secondary issues in a nation that is completely falling apart.
Oh, I wanted to tell you this, by the way, because you're a former Northeasterner, New Yorker. Right. Originally, I was from Jersey. I interviewed a guy. Now, granted, he's former Republican insider. I don't think he will be after this election. He's running for U.S. Senator from the formerly great state of New Jersey. Do you know what his major topic is, Andy? His name's Jeff Bell. Do you know what he's running on, his major plank of his platform?
And you're saying he's a Republican?
Yeah. Take a wild guess. You're never going to guess.
I couldn't even. Abortion? I don't know.
The gold standard.
Oh, I like him.
Yeah. Is that? I should have asked if you were sitting down before I said it. Because, and I asked him, are you a libertarian, Jeff? And he says, no. But then I go down a list of issues that really are libertarian issues. Like, do you think the government should be telling your kids what they should eat for lunch in the school cafeteria? We go down a list. I don't have to go through them. You know what they are. And he checks off pretty much every single issue on the list. And said, I don't know how to tell you this, Jeff, but you sound a lot more like a libertarian than you do like a Republican. And I said, do you think the Federal Reserve has done anything directly or indirectly to sabotage your campaign? And what he said was, I think the word's gone out to the Republican Party that support for anyone, without naming names, that opposes their continued hegemony in the economy will not be looked upon favorably,
Of course, we know that 1 of 3 people minimum are being watched. And certainly that would include people like us. As for this guy, Bell, I'm not sure why he's running on a platform that no one could care less about.
Well,
in this country.
That's where I think I always think, okay, we're fighting the good fight and it's hopeless. But what he says, and, maybe he's optimistic or he has to say it because he's a candidate. What he says is, people are very concerned because anyone who's got a brain left in their head that hasn't been, brainwashed knows that what they're doing is not viable, that printing up untold currency units, controlling markets, regulations, laws, all this stuff, high taxes, is death to the economy. And there's
Yeah,
still a lot of people that care about it, Andy.
a lot of people in our world, it's a very small world. I would bet based
Bigger
on,
than you think.
well, look, I mean, we're both in this world. From my experience, my view is that probably no more than 2% of the population has even a clue of how this stuff would work, like how economics work, what money printing means, what the Fed does. And that's all, I'm hoping to, all along, I've hoped to get maybe 1% of the population to listen to the kind of things I say before it ends, because frankly, there's not enough gold for any more than that. And, what I would agree with him about certainly is the chain reaction effect. I mean, Scotland, for instance, in and of itself, not necessarily world changer, although it certainly would destroy the economy of the UK. But the chain reaction, because then other people say, I want to do that. And that's why, what's going on in Catalonia and Venice and heck, some of the parts of this country is a big deal. I mean, let's face it, if the Swiss vote yes on this vote, for one, the gold price will explode. I will say this right here. There is no chance in hell the cartel will survive that kind of event. Because we're talking about an open announcement of buying $100 billion worth of gold.
It's existential.
Right? Yeah. So there will be a chain reaction. The price goes up. Other countries, people look at the price of gold and say, we should have gold, et cetera. And, so I think these things are like a chain reaction. A reader actually wrote me today. She wrote a letter to me and Eric Sprott and every person who's in this business, in our world, and said, we should have a U.S.-Canadian gold initiative like in Switzerland. And I wrote, not a chance, because no one could care less right now. But if the Swiss initiative passes and the markets are in turbulence and gold starts going up, you can bet you're going to see a lot more talk about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, look, Andy, go back to the American Revolution, okay? Wasn't a one-off event. Jefferson said it, one man with courage is a majority. You get several million people really agitating, really pissed off, really not willing to accept the status quo. Get 30 million, 40 million. All of a sudden, you got an unstoppable force. Now, I'm not like stupid about this, Andy. You know me pretty well by now. Mm-hmm. But there is a movement of discontent, unhappiness, and that can transform very quickly into a group of people who are just fed up, like Howard Beale, mad as hell, and aren't going to take it anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't know how to deal with it. Look at Cliven Bundy out there, right? Look how fast they backed off.
I'm reading about the French Revolution right now. I'm reading the Edward Rutherford book, Paris. But again, we have record social unrest right now. I mean, I don't know how you would measure it, but if there was a measure of the broadness of global social unrest today, there's no doubt that it's as high as at any time in centuries. I don't even count like World War II as social unrest. That's just a military movement. But as far as the amount of people that are angry with their governments, the amount of people that are disenfranchised and hopeless. People in America, the majority believe there's no such thing as an American dream, and it's all because of money printing, the inflation. I mean, there's never been a time where there's been this much of an issue. And it only gets worse, by the way. The more markets get in turbulence, the more the currencies get, the more people flock into the dollar and cause these collapsing currencies. And then you have more inflation. I mean, look at what's going on in the currencies of the world right now. Yeah. I mean, we have oil plunging to $80. But the Indonesian rupiah, the Brazilian real, the Russian ruble, the Indian rupee, I mean, currencies everywhere are crashing. Not to say forgetting things like in Argentina and really bad places, but we're talking about major issues coming into the fore here. And again, I wrote last week an article called 2008 with one temporary exception, and that exception is the PPT's ability to keep the stock market higher. And therefore make it look like things aren't so bad. And that's why they were so terrified at what happened 2 weeks ago when everything was falling. Because A, like I said, if it falls, that's the end game. And B, they have to meet next week and pretend that they're ending QE. And then you got the elections coming up. And then if gold goes up and the Swiss have the referendum. So they're just juggling 1,000 balls in the air right now. And the Russians hate us and the Chinese are trying to de-dollarize. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could set off exactly what you're talking about. I think 99% of the people are reactive about it, once it happens, then they go, oh, something's wrong. It's not like they're sitting there planning. But once they come together, like the French Revolution, they come together.
Yep, Les Miserables. And look, would you ever have believed 10 years ago that any candidate anywhere in the country would be running his primary issue is the gold standard?
Certainly not New Jersey, because
anywhere
New
in the world, in the country,
more from the paper money than anyone else. So good for him.
Anywhere in the country, forget about, in Jersey especially, but anywhere in the country, forget it. Wouldn't ever happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of course saying all the Wall Street money that has enriched the 1%, all those people live in the metro area. They live in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. So you'd think if any place you would not find someone running on that platform, especially a Republican, because Republicans, it's Democrats who are more into the share the wealth thing. It would be New Jersey. So it's certainly a sign of the times that things are changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not like he's going to win because there hasn't been a New Jersey senator 40 years, Republican senator since Clifford Case, but it could have been like, I had him on the show. It could have been like talking to you, literally, that's what's amazing about it. So
what's his background? Is he in finance or law or what?
He's a policy wonk, wrote speeches for Reagan. He's just very knowledgeable about the economy, knowledgeable about Austrian economics, and somebody who cares about the country and the way it's headed. And
well, it's certainly going to happen.
Yeah.
And you look at what's happening today. I mean, you talk about pulling the string as tight as possible, putting I wrote an article months ago called "The Beach Balls at Record Depths" as they push it underwater as far as they can. I mean, we're seeing in the last few weeks the Chinese gold demand numbers have been more than the entire global production. There's been surging demand in India. In silver, forget it. The Indian silver imports are on a pace to match last year's record levels. The Royal Canadian Mint, U.S. Mint sales of silver eagles and silver maples on a pace to match or exceed last year's record levels. GOFO rates are in backwardation. We've had huge drawdowns in inventories. The Comex, the LBMA, the Shanghai Exchange. There's enormous open interest in the December contract, and there's just so many things going on here as production is on the verge of collapsing with the supply demand. So, I mean, how long can they keep Mother Economic Nature at bay? Not just in gold and silver, but the whole rigging of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got the U.S. and Royal Canadian Mint, their production, sky high. I didn't even know they had any gold left in the Comex for them to withdraw, honestly.
Well, they have about 1 million ounces of registered gold. That's, $1 billion. It's nothing. And, it's all fake anyway. I mean, the numbers don't make sense at all. And, as far as silver, it's a whopping 67 million ounces, which is, $1 billion. And I wrote an article last week called $50 million of silver. That's it, because that's all that Shanghai has. This is the biggest delivery mechanism in the world. Shanghai Silver Exchange, $50 million. That's it. That's their whole inventory of silver. So again, I mean, we're talking about extremely, extremely tight and prone to the type of shortages that we've had 3 times in the last 5 years.
Wow. And that's all the good news, huh?
I wish I had some good news. I mean, you're asking about my world, and, it's the world that obviously you focus on as well, too. And I want to have something good to say. But, there's a reason why I sold my last stock in April of 2000. I mean, we're going to hit our 15-year anniversary since the last time I owned a stock. I owned mining stocks for a while. I haven't owned them in 4 years now. Mm-hmm. But I won't touch anything that has to do with the economy, because I think the global economy is at its worst point, its singular worst point of our lifetimes this minute. And I think it's going to be much, much worse in 2015 until finally, the money printing acceleration turns into hyperinflation. It's inevitable.
Yeah. Well, certainly there are rough times ahead, and really nothing has changed here. We talked about this so many times already. The causes of the 08, 09 collapse, nothing has changed. And there's no desire to change it till they've squeezed the last drop of profit out of it. And even then, they won't be happy, right?
Yeah, and look, again, to me, it's less about milking the public as it is about maintaining the status quo. The status quo is one in which the 1% benefit. It's not necessarily in my mind that they're thinking we need to steal every penny from the system before it goes down. They think we need to keep this system going as long as we can. We get paid well. Who cares what happens to everyone else? And once the currencies, people lose confidence in them, and the markets they lose control of them, then the banks and the politicians that rely on the banks and all the other constituents that rely on the banks go down and become average people. And so they'll lie, cheat, everything possible to keep it going.
And you saw the results of the stress test in Europe.
Yeah, I was reading Zero Hedge did some good commentary on it. I mean, first of all, the fact that 20% of the banks failed it is pretty damning, because these are like softballs. I mean, they couldn't be easier to pass. But then, as Zero Hedge, they put the numbers in of what the worst case scenario was, and it was inflation the same as it is today. Meanwhile, the ECB is sitting there screaming how they're deathly scared of deflation. But the worst case scenario that they put out for their stress test is 0.6% inflation. And then they said, but if it got much worse, then there would be massive write-offs and debt and all this stuff. But that's not a stress test. The stress test would be what they actually worry might happen happens, not what if we are where we are today, which is bad enough as it is.
Yeah, we'd be talking bank failures, right?
I mean, that's where we are today. Bank failures. Ask Banco Espirito Santo, 20% of the banks failing stress tests that essentially have the same assumptions that we're sitting at as we speak. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have no strategy for dealing with it. That's what you have to understand. There really is absolutely no strategy for dealing with any of this. I think you said it best. They wake up every morning and try to figure out how can we keep the system going for one more day.
Right? Yeah, their strategy can be summarized in 3 words: whatever it takes. Everything was collapsing in July of 2012, and the Spanish banks got the 100 billion euro bailout. And Draghi gave a speech and said, "I will do whatever it takes to save the euro, and believe me, it will be enough." That's what he said. He didn't do anything. There was nothing going on for years. It just prompted this huge rally because it coincided with QE over here and Abenomics. It created this big rally into all these ridiculous assets, worthless assets like Greek bonds. And here we are 3 years later, where the economies are much worse than they ever were, and the assets are much more overvalued. So now he's got to do something about it, which is QE. That's the strategy.
Whatever it takes.
And believe me, it will be enough.
Yeah, and it would be funny if it wasn't so tragic and so damaging in the long run, because the longer you put off what's necessary, what you need to do, right? What happens? Yeah.
Well, this is exactly. Look, I mean, the system had to die. It's not like it ever could have been. Fixed. All fiat currency systems die. Of course, if it died 10 years ago, the transition period would have been a lot shorter and easier. But now it's created the most horrific bubbles of all time and the most horrific wealth inequality and debt. And I mean, it's just going to be like the Big Bang that destroys the financial universe, and hopefully doesn't start World War III.
Yeah, that's the best we can hope for, huh?
Yes, that's how I look at it. I really hope that we can avoid major war. That's my best case scenario.
Yeah. So what is Joe Sixpack to do, Andy?
Well, for Joe Sixpack, as we know, I mean, I read an article today that said, what was it? 70% of people make less than $30,000 a year. The median household income is $50,000. The average person can't do anything. Nothing. There's nothing. At $50,000 a year, you're raking in probably $20,000 of debt. just to pay your bills. So the average person can't do anything. Anyone who has the ability to do something should be doing something, should be preparing, with the necessities of life, things that will be impacted by hyperinflation. And of course, gold is just one part of it.
Yeah. Yep. We agree. And yeah, but even if you can just afford to buy a roll of pre-1965 dimes every couple of weeks, right? It's something, right?
Right. Well, I have an article called Must Own Junk Silver. Actually, I wrote two of them. I mean, if you can have anything, it's the best way. It's right now, I should say, it's not the cheapest way. Sometimes it is. Right now, it's trading at about the same premiums as regular silver. Last year, it got to much, much higher. I don't think it'll ever get lower again, but it's certainly the best way to protect yourself from a worst case, potentially bartering society, even if for just a short amount of time.
Yeah, we know that. And, the merry-go-round keeps going, and one day it stops. And then what's going to happen, right?
I know. That's what I've been talking about for, 12 years now, almost 13.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I take it back. I wasn't talking this way that long. I mean, when I went all into precious metals in 2002, it was more offensive than defensive. I thought the dollar would fall. I thought there would be certainly increased inflation and a weak economy, but I didn't think it would be cataclysmic. Not until several years of understanding the relationship between paper money and economies, and of course, seeing how the governments reacted over this period. Now it's completely clear to me that this big bang is coming likely sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they haven't done anything to fix the problem, right?
No, they made it exponentially worse, and that's what they will continue to do.
Yeah.
Until the game ends.
Yep. Until the game ends, until the musical chairs stop and all of you are left standing up, right?
Yeah. Very sad.
Yeah.
Hopefully people that are listening will do something to protect themselves.
Yeah. And you can, and don't be taken in by the smoke and mirrors of which they specialize in and they're great at doing, right? I mean, you look at all of the hype, and it's so easy to forget that really the Federal Reserve basically is the benefactor of most economic education that takes place in America today.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You have record amounts of people that are going to college and record amounts of people who have no clue about a great many things. I was talking about, my daughter, my 2-year-old, about she's going to, eventually she'll go to school. And I'm thinking there's so many things in school that I wouldn't even dream of sending her to that I had to do.
Yeah.
There's very little that I really care about. You need good in math and science. And heck, speaking Chinese. I think those are about the three most important things you could learn.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. It's, I mean, there's some other stuff, but yeah, you're correct there. It's really, really important that you learn those things, languages in general, something that we don't emphasize enough in this country for sure. And, and
that is something Joe Sixpack can do.
Yeah.
They can focus their lives and certainly their children's lives in the right areas that might help them going forward, because no matter what happens, there's always going to be a need for people who are talented in science. Always.
Yeah. Oh, yes. No question about it. We know that is very true. And, languages too. We don't have enough people who are skilled in languages. So,
particularly Chinese.
Yeah, particularly for sure. So learn Chinese and figure this system out, right?
Yep, that's the title today.
Yeah, figure the system out, because if you don't, it's going to burn you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
do something.
Yeah. And on that note, we're going to go milesfranklin.com, sign up for Andy's and Bill Holter's Daily Missive, Must Reading. And also, while you're there, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, and we will catch up with you next week, Andy. You be well.
All right. You too.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Every week the show is growing. Would you like to be a part of it? Then go to clubfsn.com and help support us with $1, $2, $5, or $10 a month and get a host of premium content with newsletters dropped into your mailbox, free books, private audio clips, webinars, and much more. Then join clubfsn.com. If you want to get ahead of the trend and ensure your family's financial security before it's too late, go to clubfsn.com and sign up.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.